Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our kitchen. Again, this is Craven College coming to you from home on this Wednesday morning. And, Wednesday afternoon now. We're going to be doing a risotto, Pea and Mint Risotto today. Just have a little pan down just to show some of the ingredients we've got today. So we've got some salmon fillets, we've got some peas, which I've taken out of the freezer. We've got some lovely mint, which I've just picked out of the garden and washed. We have some risotto rice there, some Parmesan cheese. We've got some stock, which I'm just going to mix in a minute. Red onion or a white onion, a little bit of white wine and some olive oil. Okay. That is all you're going to do, all you're going to need to make this risotto today. Okay. So it's quite a straightforward process. The one thing you've got to do with your risotto when you make it is you've got to make it with a lot of love. You've got to make it with a bit of passion, a lot of love, okay? Because when you take your time with it, all that stirring that you're going to do is what's going to make it lovely and creamy. You don't need to add anything to it to get that lovely creamy texture. It's just all the effort you put in when you're mixing and stirring to bring all those flavours out. Okay, so what I've got here, you can also see probably on the camera here now that I've got all my equipment laid out here. I've got my bowls here to serve. What I'm going to do is I've just got the oven on a very low heat. I'm just going to pop my serving bowls into the oven, just then they're warming up, because I don't want to serve hot food into a cold bowl. Okay, so that's just on a very, very low heat. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to boil the kettle, which shouldn't take too many seconds, just to mix my stock up. You guys might have done this already, okay? I'm just using one of these little, they're Knorr stock pots, I think. I am using chicken stock, okay? Now, you can use, some of you might be using veggie stock. I use chicken stock just for a little bit more flavour, okay? Now, obviously, if you're making this dish for a vegetarian, you can do it without the fish. All sorts of different risottos. Can you hear my kettle boiling now? Whistling away. There we go. Okay, kettle's off. I'm just going to measure that out to 750 ml. Okay, that's approximate. Okay, you might need that, you might not. Okay, it depends on how you like your risotto. Okay. Depends if you like it a bit firmer, a little bit looser, okay? We'll go through that when I'm actually cooking it, all right? So, you can, with risotto, it's quite a forgiving thing. You can put in whatever you like, really. So, we're using peas and mint today, okay? You can use butternut squash and sage, mushrooms, all sorts of different things to make your risotto, which can be either be the dish in itself, or can be the basis, a side dish for a piece of fish or a piece of meat, maybe some chicken, something like that on the side of it. Just think about the flavours, about what goes with what, okay? My students, you're thinking of this week about herbs. Remember, the task you're doing this week is all about herbs that you find in the garden, and which herbs, friends, work really well with which foods. Okay, so we're thinking about those things. So you guys hopefully have started to think about that already. Okay, now obviously what I'm going to do, what I always do, is a little quick sharpen of the knife using these things. I can't remember if I showed this last time, and really neat little knife sharpener, which you're just going to pull the blade through. Okay, because the only reason, well, one of the only reasons you're going to cut yourself using a knife is because your knife is blunt, okay? If your knife's nice and sharp, okay, I'm running my thumb across the blade, not down the blade, because I'm going to cut myself going down it, just across the blade, we can see it's nice and sharp. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to chop the onion to prepare it. Okay, you'll notice here I've got two chopping boards. I've got one, which I'm going to do for the onion. I've got these little plastic kind of flexible boards. I use this for anything raw, so I use this for either raw meat or raw fish. Obviously my salmon is raw, so I'm going to cut my raw salmon on that eventually when we get to it. Okay, so obviously we've got a root on the onion and we've got the top of the onion. So what I'm going to do is, using my cutting method, which my students again will be telling me, shouting out at the screen what cutting method I'm using for this now. Okay, I'm taking the top off, and then, so it's nice and steady, I'm going to cut in half. Okay, when I've cut in half, now my students should be telling me I'm missing one thing on this, and my mise en place, everything ready, which is a bowl to put my bits and pieces in. Okay, so I'm just going to fetch that now. So there's a little bowl. We always have a little bowl, so we're making sure all the time we're working nice and neat and tidy. Okay, now, so I'm going to peel the onion. Now it says in the recipe a small onion or half an onion. I quite like a lot of onion in my dishes, so I'm probably going to use the whole thing, but it's a reasonably sized onion this, so it's going to produce quite a lot. Okay, now, I've peeled the onion, I've still got the root on. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the tip of my knife, I'm going to use my claw method again, and I'm going to take it almost to the root. Okay, now in this dish we want a nice fine dice. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to be careful on this bit, is to take it across and across again. Okay, and then when I start cutting down, nice and controlled, it's going to be nice, neat little cubes. And a small cube, as we know, catering students, is called a brunoise. Okay, and I'm going to go around the edge of the root, so we're just left with a little bit of root at the bottom there. Okay, I'm now going to do exactly the same with the other half of the onion. Okay, I'm going to take it down, so hopefully you're following along with this. If you're not, you can be doing this later. We'll be putting a video of this up, I think, tomorrow. Also, if you guys have cooked it, it would be really good to have you share your pictures onto the Instagram page so we can see what you've been doing. Okay, we can see this now coming in a nice, even, fine dice. Okay, that's because we don't want great big lumps of onion in our finished risotto. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is I am going to put my pan on. So I've got quite a wide based pan here, simply because that allows much more of the heat to get to much more of the rice at the same time. Okay, if you've got a smaller pan, it actually is going to take a little bit longer, so we get a nice even spread across there. So I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil on the bottom there. Okay, and I am going to start on my onions. Okay, as I say, there are quite a lot of onions there. I quite like that. You guys might not like quite so many onions. Okay, you might like to put a little bit less in. Okay. Note, by the way, that my board was on top of a cloth to stop it sliding about. Okay, just a little safety point there. Okay, so all the time we're working tidily, we're keeping neat and tidy all the time. Okay, now, so I've got my onions in the pan. Okay, you can probably hear that starting to sizzle a little bit. So we're going to just soften the onions. I don't want to add my rice yet until I've softened those onions a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to soften those up. Now, you'll notice I've got salt and pepper here. Okay, we need to be careful with the salt, because obviously, as we've said before, with stock is quite salty. Okay, so we want to be very careful about adding salt. What I would say about salt is we'll add pepper to the dish as we're cooking it. We're going to wait till the end, and then we're going to taste, and then at the end we're going to adjust that seasoning when we decide if it needs a little bit more salt or it doesn't. Okay, so over here, this amount of rice, if you have a look at that, okay, that doesn't look a huge amount of rice. This is going to do 2 people. Okay, there's 130 grams of rice there. It doesn't look a lot, but by the time we've cooked that is really going to expand out. Okay, and you can see it as we start to cook. And as we start to add stock, that is really going to fill out, and that will be more than enough for 2 portions. Okay. The smell of that fresh mint is absolutely delicious. Okay. So when I eventually come to chop this, I'm going to leave a few leaves just onto one side so we can garnish the dish at the end. Okay. So I'm just making sure that everything's now close to hand. Okay. So I'm ready to start putting things together. Okay, so if you come back to the pan, okay, you can see that's starting to. I'm just going to put the extract on. Hopefully that's not going to detract too much from. You can hear me, you've got sizzling and extract and me speaking now. Okay, so can we see those onions? As they start to cook, if you've used a white onion, you'll see it a bit more clearly. As it starts to cook, they'll start to become a little bit translucent. Okay, we don't want any colour on there. Okay, we don't want to make them go brown. We just want to gently cook them. Okay, I don't want crispy brown onions in my finished dish. Okay, I want those to be nice and soft. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Okay, so this dish is all about heat control and about, once we start to put the rice in, about constantly stirring. Okay, because we want to, the more stirring we do, we're going to release those starches out of the rice, which is going to give it that lovely creamy texture to finish. Okay, so we're just going to soften up for another minute or so, maybe 2 minutes, and then we're going to add our rice to this. Okay, as I say, with risotto, it's quite, you can do lots of different things with it. It's a really good dish by itself, just to have with lots of different vegetables in. You can do, as I say, butternut squash, you can have Mediterranean vegetables, things like that can go into a risotto, and but it's a lovely accompaniment to any kind of main dish as well that you can think to put it with. Okay. So feel free when you do this again to think of different things that you could actually put into a risotto. Okay. This one is quite, because it's pea and mint, it's quite fresh. It's quite a light risotto. Okay. Now, to this now, okay, I am going to add some rice. Okay. Now I'm going to put all the rice in there. So that's just gone into the dry pan, which has that little bit of oil in it, and we're just going to start gently cooking that rice. Okay, we just want to start that cooking process. Okay, now if we look, I don't know if we can see this, can we see these grains of rice here? Okay, you can see it's slightly translucent around the edges and white in the middle. Okay, now as it cooks, the whole of the piece of rice is going to turn more translucent and you'll be able to squish it between your finger and your thumb. Okay, we want to get it to the point where that white is nearly gone. Alright, what we don't want is rice pudding. Okay, we want something that is going to have a little bit of bite to it, so it's a little bit al dente. Okay, now I've started that process. What I'm going to do now is to add my wine. Okay, there's a little bit of wine that we didn't drink, so that's going to go in. Okay, so you can listen to that. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Okay, I can smell the alcohol off that. We're going to burn that alcohol off, but we still want to leave the flavour of that that's going to be going through into your rice, into your risotto. Okay, so we're just going to, you see that the rice is now, that liquid which went in there, the rice has just about absorbed that really fairly quickly. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do now is just have a look at my heat. Okay, so my heat, if you can see that, is on quite low. Okay, I might tip it up just a little bit. Okay, but the idea is to cook this quite slowly. It should take about 15-20 minutes to do. What I'm going to do now, okay, is to start to slowly add some of this stock. Okay, so I'm going to do it a ladle at a time. Okay, you can see that now. And we might need a little bit more than 750ml, we might need a little bit less. It all depends how you want it finished. But basically, what we're going to do now is to stir it. Show it a little bit of love, okay? That's what's going to make our dish lovely in the end, okay? So at the moment, the flavours we've got in there, we've got some onion in there, we've got some, obviously the olive oil, you get a little bit of flavour off that, you've got your white wine, and we're just starting to add our stock, okay? We are going to add a little bit of pepper shortly, okay? So, we're going to keep on stirring, keep on mixing. So I'm not sure if any of you are commenting as we're going along at the moment, if there's any comments coming in. Some people waving at me, I think. But if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them, or we can answer them at the end while we're doing this. But can you see this now? Look, we're starting to absorb into the rice, okay? So that liquid is starting to, some of it's evaporating and some of it's actually going into the rice. Okay, so hopefully, and it's just all in the stirring. Okay, we can see the bubbles here, look, so we know it's bubbling, we know it's boiling. Okay, but what we don't do is walk away and leave it. Okay, and if we add the stock all at once, we're not going to get that lovely creamy finish. Okay, so that the idea is we add the stock really nice and slowly. Okay, so we're nearly ready now to start adding a little bit more stock. Okay, so I'm now going to put some more stock in. Okay, just towards the end of this cooking, we're going to add the peas. Okay, they're frozen peas. They might still be a little bit frozen, but they're already cooked. Obviously, they've been blanched already. So they just need basically warming through, okay, which will allow the liquid to do. And then just before the end, we're going to add the salmon, which we're just going to poach into the liquid. Okay, another way of doing that, if we wanted to serve the salmon, you can pan fry the salmon and just sit it on the top of the risotto. Okay, it's just however you want to do it. The way we're doing it today is I'm actually going to poach that salmon in the actual liquid itself. If we're going to slice it quite finely, so it will literally take 2 minutes to actually cook that salmon once it's in there. Okay, so I'm going to keep stirring that. In between that, what I'm actually going to do now is have a look at chopping my mint and cutting my salmon. Okay, so I know I said not to leave this, but we're just going to leave it for a couple of minutes just so we can do those two things. Now if you have a look at these rice now, you can see, if you can see this on my finger, okay, that's the hard white bit in the middle. Squash it between your thumb and forefinger. Okay, so we're going to move away now, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave a couple of nice mint leaves here for garnish. Okay, 3 is always nicer than 2, so I'm going to leave 6 little mint leaves there. Okay, the rest of this mint, which I've washed, I'm just going to bunch together like this, and I'm just going to chop it. Just doesn't matter about doing this in any precise kind of way. It's just a rough chop of mint, okay, which is going to go through the dish. And now I'm getting a lovely smell of mint coming through, and that works beautifully well with the peas. Okay. Any of you guys who are watching this who aren't students at college at the moment, you still have, I think, 2 days left to, a couple of days left to apply for courses for next year. So you can have a look at Craven College online, and you'll find all the information there to be able to do that. Okay, so I have chopped my mint. Okay, I'm going to leave this little bits of mint on one side. I'm just going to very quickly wash my knife, and then I'm going to show you chopping the salmon. So while we're doing that, let's just have a little look at this. Okay, so we can see that has a lovely, still smell the wine coming off that, mixed in with the stock now. We can see that's starting to absorb that more. Okay. So we're using arborio rice for this. So again, my students will know all about different kinds of rices. What sort of different kinds of rices are there? And what sort of dishes are you going to use? What sort of dishes are you going to make with those different kinds of rice? Have a little think about that, my students, while you're looking at this or while you're cooking this. Okay, it's a short grain rice. Okay. So what I'm going to do is cook that a little bit more, then we're going to add some more liquid to that. But you see how that small amount of rice in the bottom of that pan has now expanded right out, okay? That didn't look enough at the start, did it? But now it certainly does, okay? So we're now going to come and look at the salmon. Okay, so I've got fillets of salmon here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these really quite. You see that? Maybe sort of 1/2 centimetre across. Okay, because those, as I say, are going to poach in this liquid very, very quickly. Okay. These particular fillets haven't got skins on. Okay, it is quite nice if they have got skin on we could be pan frying those whole. Okay, so I'm just slices of salmon. Okay, let's put those all onto my plate there. Those are now all ready to add right at the end. Okay, so have a look at the pan, please. You can see in that pan that is now. Oh, look at that. Okay, so now we're ready for a little bit more liquid. You can see that rice puffing up now. Look. Okay, you see these pieces of rice here? Okay, I'm now going to get one between my thumb and my forefinger, and I'm going to squish it. Can you see that when I've squished it? That it's still some hard bits of rice in the middle there, but it's starting now to soften up. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more stock. Stir it around a little bit more. At this stage, I'm going to add some pepper. Okay, so I'm just going to take my little bit of pepper here. Just going to add, again, I like quite a lot of pepper, but it's down to taste. Okay, that's cracked black pepper. I'm just putting in there. Okay. So that is now starting to incorporate very, very nicely. Okay. Now I'm not going to add my mint in until quite towards the end because I want to maintain that really fresh aroma and taste of the mint. So that's going to go in right at the end. In a couple of minutes we're going to add the peas, and then almost towards the end we're going to add the salmon as well. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a teaspoon and I'm just going to taste some of this rice to see how it's doing. Okay. So again, we know the rule on tasting. Okay. Just once into the pan. We're not standing over the pan, we're standing away from it. Okay, so that rice is probably, it's still quite grainy. I want it al dente, but I don't want it so it's gritty and grainy, which is a little bit at the moment. So what I'm going to do is just cook it a little bit more. Stir it a little bit more. Okay, my glasses are steaming up over this cooker. Okay, so if you can see that's starting to come together again, look, that's starting to. And now we can see that onion's getting lost a little bit now within the rice, which is good, because the onion isn't the star attraction here. Okay. We need to make sure all those ingredients, everything that we put in, the same as anything we cook, but it's all in balance in that dish. Okay. So again, we're using mint with this, which goes really well with peas, but perhaps my students could have a little think about what else does mint go with? What else would you have mint with? There's a couple of other things which are most definitely are very good friends with mint. Okay. So, we're starting now, see, to get there. Okay, that's starting to thicken up. Now, the finished dish depends. Some people like a risotto to be that kind of consistency. Okay, I like it a little bit thicker than that. Now, if you're cooking this for later on, it's actually, you could take it off the heat at this point, okay, and make sure you cool it down, put it in the fridge, okay, and that can be ready to finish it off maybe tonight or tomorrow. Okay, that is an acceptable way of doing it. You could actually just take it so it's 3/4 cooked like it is now, remove it, cool it down, into the fridge, bring it back out when you're ready for it and finish it off. Okay, we're not going to do that right now. Okay, so have a little look at this rice here. So that's getting a little bit thicker now. So again, I'm going to add just a touch more stock to that. That may well do it now. So that's most of that. I don't know if you can see in the jug there. That's most of that stock gone. Okay, I've just turned my oven off because my plates are warm enough. Okay, so when this comes to the boil again, which it is, you can see, you're going to have another little taste. I've just cleaned my spoon in between. Okay, so that's just a little bit too much still. But what I'm going to do at this stage, I'm happy with the amount of liquid that's in there. So if we can have a look at the liquid that's in there now, look how runny that is. Okay, I think that when that has, the rice has soaked this liquid up and that has reduced down, that's going to be about the right consistency. So now, at this point, what I want to do is to add my peas. Okay, so I'm going to add my peas in. Okay. So immediately you can see that shot of colour into that risotto. Okay. Now I have seen pea and mint risottos or pea risottos where you've made a pea puree using a blender and added that to the risotto to give it a bit more, again, a bit more of a flavour hit. Okay, I've just added the whole piece to it. Now, those need time now to come back to the boil and just to finish off. At this stage, I'm going to put a little bit of Parmesan in. Okay, I've got a lump of Parmesan here. I've got my nice little grater, plain grater. Okay, whichever grater you've got is absolutely fine. And I'm just going to grate some Parmesan into there. Okay, that's going to help to add to the creaminess of it. Okay, we can see that Parmesan going in there. We can see it bubbling away nicely. Okay, now for me, there's no such thing as too much Parmesan. Okay, I love Parmesan cheese. Okay, so I'm going to put that back down there because we're going to add some more in towards the end. Okay, we're going to stir that again. Again, now we're getting that Parmesan smell coming off there. Okay, and we can now see, the effect that's had on here. Look, it's just made it go a little bit more creamy, having that Parmesan in there. So that's reducing down nicely, taking all those flavours in. Okay, now what we're going to do is go in for another little taste. Taste your food, okay? And when we taste it, can we see what it needs, okay? So I think that rice is pretty much nearly cooked. Again, if I lift a piece of this rice out, okay, we can see the rice here. It's well coated now. I'm going to pick a piece between my thumb and forefinger and I'm going to squish it. Can you see that now? Okay, just got one little bit of white in the middle, which is just giving it that little bit of bite. Okay, so we're just about there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my salmon in. Okay, I'm going to take my salmon and I'm going to put all this in. What's going to happen with this is you can see the colour of that salmon in there. Okay, I'm just spreading it out in there. Okay, as soon as that hits that boiling rice, that is starting to poach. Okay, that's not going to take more than a couple of minutes to do. Okay. That's all in there. You can see if I turn that bit over, you can see it's starting to cook already. Okay. Now, what we don't want to do with this is to overcook the salmon so it all starts completely to flake and fall to bits. Okay, we want that salmon to maintain its integrity, to maintain its how whole it is. Okay, so I'm going to very gently just stir it in. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is, very last thing, I've just tasted it before and I think a little bit more salt in there, so I'm going to add a little bit more salt into there. I'm using Maldon salt because it's easier to crush it between your fingers, and then I'm just going to reach over and add my mint. Okay, so the mint is going to go in. That's it. Done. Okay, just going to clear these choppings off here. Have a little look at the pan. You can see in the pan, okay, what's happening in there. So I'm just going to give this a little mix in. now, that salmon will probably need about another minute, because even when you take it off the heat, because the rice is hot, it's still going to keep poaching that fish. Okay, so we see that now. If you can see this bit of salmon here, look. You see the middle there? It's just starting to poach now. As it becomes this outside colour all the way through, it's done. Okay, so it's just now nearly done. Okay, now if you look at the texture of that, okay, I think that for me is about right. You may want to add just a little bit more, okay? Just a tad more liquid to that. You have a look at this piece of salmon here, look. You just see the inside of that. Okay, that's poached all the way through now, can you see? Okay, so it didn't take long to do that at all. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to serve it. Okay, I'm going to get my bowls out. And we never serve hot food into cold plates or cold bowls. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to grab a spoon. I'm going to do 2 portions of this. So you can see there's absolutely plenty of salmon and rice in this dish. Okay. Spoon it all out. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a piece of roll. I'm just going to neaten the edges up. Okay. In this bowl. Okay. I'm just going to put a little bit more parmesan onto the top. Okay. This one. This one, and I'm just going to garnish with the mint leaves. Okay, so there you have. Just turn the fan off, actually, that's quite noisy now. There you have pea and mint risotto with poached salmon. Okay, so if you've hopefully you've got all that plated up, so what you need to do now is to eat it while it's still hot. Okay, and any questions, please fire them in, and if I don't answer them right now, I'll answer them later on. Put your pictures onto Instagram, please, onto the Craven College Catering page when you've made it. It'd be great to see what you guys have done. All right, and I think we're probably going to come back next week to cook something else. Okay, so watch this space for what that's going to be. But hopefully you've enjoyed making that, and hopefully you'll enjoy eating it as well. So thanks very much for joining us this morning, and look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you.